A cold night at the supermarket parking lot. A young security guard works tirelessly collecting parking fees, just hoping to earn enough to cover his mother's hospital bills. Suddenly, an elderly man grows flustered when the payment machine rejects his card. While a coworker scoffs, the guard pulls out his last few coins to help. The next morning, a strange call: his mother's medical bills had been paid, and what followed was beyond anything he could imagine. Before we dive deeper into today's story, I know many of us are looking for simple, natural ways to stay active and strong. That's why I'd like to introduce you to Shilajit Essential Extract. If you'd like to check it out, just use the link in the description, or scan the QR code right here on your screen. The fluorescent lights of Miller's Market cast harsh shadows across the parking lot as Jack Thompson settled into his security booth for another 12-hour shift. At 25, his shoulders already carried the weight of someone twice his age. The plastic chair creaked as he sat down, checking his phone for the 15th time that hour. "You are gent. Payment required. $2,847. Memorial Hospital." His thumb hovered over the notification, then swiped it away. As if that would make it disappear, Jack's hand moved to his wallet, fingers tracing the worn leather. Inside, a $20 bill and some change rattled around like promises he couldn't keep. Next week's rent. His mother's medication. Gas to get to the hospital. The math didn't work, no matter how many times he tried to make it add up. "Thompson, you sleeping in there?" Derek's voice crackled through the radio. His coworker, a heavy-set white guy with a perpetual scowl, was stationed near the exit barrier. "Just checking the schedule," Jack replied, trying to keep his voice neutral. Derek had a way of making everything feel like an accusation. "Yeah, well, stay alert. Corporate's been breathing down our necks about customer experience." Derek made air quotes that Jack could practically hear through the radio. Through the booth's smudged window, Jack watched shoppers come and go. It was 6 p.m., the dinner rush. The exit lane had a steady stream of vehicles processing their parking payments through the automated barrier system. Jack barely noticed the silver Mercedes that pulled up to the exit barrier. His phone buzzed again. "Reminder, your mother's post-surgical care continues only with immediate payment." He closed his eyes, remembering the pale hospital room, the steady beep of monitors, his mother's weak smile when he'd promised her everything would be okay. That was 3 days ago. The hospital had given him until tomorrow morning. $23.67. That's what stood between him and complete failure. Suddenly, the exit barrier's alarm started blaring. The automated voice announced loudly, "Payment required. Please insert ticket and payment." Jack looked up. The Mercedes sat at the barrier, engine running. The alarm continued. Cars were already lining up behind it. "Payment required. Please insert ticket and payment." The driver's door of the Mercedes opened, and an elderly man stepped out, probably 70, maybe older. Despite the luxury car, George Miller wore a simple flannel shirt and khakis that had seen better days. His movements were careful, deliberate, as he approached the payment machine, patting his pockets frantically. The car behind the Mercedes honked. Then another. "Payment required." Jack could see Derek walking toward the commotion, that familiar scowl already forming. The elderly man was checking his pockets, his car, looking increasingly distressed. The machine kept repeating its message. More horns blared. "Come on, old man, move it," someone shouted from 3 cars back. Derek arrived at the barrier, hands on his hips. Even from the booth, Jack could see his confrontational stance. "Sir, you're holding up the line. Either pay or move your vehicle." George's weathered face flushed with embarrassment. "I'm so sorry, I've forgotten my wallet at home." "Payment required." The horn symphony grew louder. Someone yelled an obscenity. "You forgot your wallet." Derek's voice carried across the parking lot, dripping with sarcasm. "You're driving a Mercedes and you forgot your wallet. That's convenient." "It's not like that, I genuinely." George started, his dignity crumbling under the assault of horns and Derek's contempt. "Yeah, sure it isn't." Derek crossed his arms. "I've seen this scam before. Rich guys trying to skip out on parking fees. Like $4 is going to break you. Payment required. Please insert ticket and payment." More horns, angry voices. The line was now 8 cars deep. Jack couldn't take it anymore. He stepped out of the booth and jogged toward the chaos. "What do we got here?" he asked, trying to sound official. "This gentleman," Derek said the word like an insult, "claims he forgot his wallet." Convenient excuse. George turned to Jack, embarrassment and desperation warring on his face. "Young man, I genuinely did forget it. I live about 20 miles from here. If I could just go home and come back. Payment required. Oh, give me a break." Derek snapped. "You expect us to believe you drove all the way here, and just realized you have no money? The barrier won't open until someone pays. You're blocking the exit." The cars behind were honking in unison now. Someone got out of their vehicle, shouting about being late for dinner. Jack saw the panic in the old man's eyes, the same look he'd seen in his mother's face when the hospital bills started piling up. The look of someone trapped by circumstances beyond their control. "How much is it?" Jack asked quietly. $4.50, the machine announced helpfully. Derek laughed harshly. "Don't even think about it, Thompson. This old codger is playing us." "Sir," Jack addressed George directly, "I can cover the parking fee if you need help." George's eyes widened, glistening slightly. "I couldn't possibly ask you to." "You're not asking, I'm offering. Payment required. This is your final warning before security is notified." "Jesus Christ, Thompson." Derek stepped between them. "You're really going to fall for this? Look at his car. He's probably got more money in his glove compartment than we make in a month." Jack pulled out his wallet, hands already reaching for the bills despite his brain screaming at him to stop. That money was supposed to buy dinner for the next 3 days. That money was supposed to go toward his mother's hospital bill. But the horns kept blaring. The old man's hands were shaking, and Derek's cruel smirk made Jack's decision crystal clear. He inserted his own parking ticket and fed a $5 bill into the machine. "Payment accepted. Thank you." The barrier lifted with a mechanical whir. "This is unbelievable," Derek muttered. "You just got played, Thompson." George stood there, frozen, as the barrier rose. "I don't know what to say." "Just drive through, sir," Jack said gently. "You're holding up traffic." The cars behind immediately started honking again, demanding movement. George fumbled in his pockets, pulled out a business card, and pressed it into Jack's hand. "Please, I'll pay you back. I'll bring it tomorrow." Barrier closing in 10 seconds. "Go, sir, before it closes again." George squeezed Jack's hand, his grip trembling. "Thank you, truly. You have no idea what this means." He hurried back to his Mercedes and drove through. The line of cars behind him surged forward like water through a broken dam. Derek stood there, shaking his head. "You're a special kind of stupid, Thompson. That old man just scammed you out of $5. Jack looked at the business card in his hand. Plain white, elegant lettering. George Miller. An address, a phone number, nothing more. "Maybe," Jack said quietly. "Or maybe he just needed help." "Yeah, well, don't come crying to me when you can't afford lunch tomorrow." Derek walked away, still muttering about bleeding hearts and suckers. Jack returned to his booth, the sound of Derek's mockery following him. He opened his wallet. $18.67 left. His phone buzzed. Another hospital reminder. He stared at the business card, then at his nearly empty wallet, then at the hospital notification glowing on his screen. "At least I did the right thing," he whispered to the empty booth. But as he watched his relief worker arrive for the next shift, as he prepared to leave for another night of trying to sleep while worrying about tomorrow, the words felt hollow. Somewhere out in the city, George Miller was driving his Mercedes home, probably forgetting all about the parking attendant who'd saved him from embarrassment. And tomorrow Jack would have to tell his mother he'd failed her. He tucked the business card into his wallet, a small rectangle of paper that meant nothing next to the mountain of his problems. The parking lot lights flickered on as full darkness settled. Jack gathered his things, checked his phone one last time, still no miracle solutions to his impossible situation, and headed to his car. The Honda sputtered to life on the third try, the gas gauge read nearly empty. $18.67 to last until Friday's paycheck. $0.00 to save his mother. But somewhere in the city, An old man had made it home safely, dignity intact, because Jack had chosen kindness over self-preservation. That had to count for something. Even if it counted for nothing at the hospital. Even if Derek was right, and he'd just been played for a fool. Jack drove into the night, the business card in his wallet, feeling heavier than it should. Tomorrow he'd have to face impossible choices. Tonight he'd helped a stranger escape an embarrassing situation. In the grand scheme of his collapsing world, it seemed like such a small meaningless thing. But in his chest where hope used to live before medical bills killed it, something flickered. Maybe kindness mattered. Maybe it didn't change his situation. But maybe, just maybe, it changed him. And in a world getting darker by the minute, that had to be worth something. Even if that something was just $18.67. The security booth felt smaller than usual, as Jack's shift dragged into its 8th hour. He'd managed to scrounge a few packets of crackers from the break room, the ones nobody wanted because they were 2 weeks past their best-by date. They tasted like cardboard and defeat. Derek had avoided him for most of the shift, but Jack could feel the judgment radiating from across the parking lot. Every time their paths crossed, Derek would shake his head or mutter something about Thompson's charity case. His phone sat face down on the desk. He couldn't bear to look at it anymore. At 11 p.m., during his break, Jack finally forced himself to make the call. The hospital's billing department had a 24-hour line. Of course they did. Memorial Hospital Billing, this is Patricia speaking. How can I help you? Jack cleared his throat. Hi. This is Jack Thompson. Patient account for Eleanor Thompson. I'm calling about the payment due tomorrow. Keyboard clicks echoed through the phone. Yes, Mr. Thompson, we have your account here. The outstanding balance is $2,847. We need that payment by 9 a.m. tomorrow to continue your mother's post-operative care and physical therapy sessions. I know. Listen, I just need a few more days, maybe a week. I'm working extra shifts, and I have some money coming. The lies tasted bitter. He had nothing coming. No extra shifts existed. Mr. Thompson, Patricia's voice softened, which somehow made it worse. We've already extended the deadline twice. Hospital policy requires. She just had surgery. Jack's voice cracked. She needs those therapy sessions. The doctor said they're crucial for her recovery. If she doesn't get them now, she could have permanent damage to her. I understand this is difficult. Do you? Jack pressed his palm against his forehead. Do you really? Because I'm working 12-hour shifts in a parking booth, making minimum wage, and I just gave away $5 I desperately needed. Because some old guy at the exit barrier forgot his wallet, and my coworker was being cruel, and now I can't even afford to eat. And you're telling me my mother might not walk properly again because I don't have $3,000. Silence stretched across the line. Mr. Thompson, I truly am sorry, but these decisions aren't mine to make. The hospital has already provided significant charity care. Without payment, we'll have to discharge your mother and refer her to county services for any additional care. Jack's free hand clenched into a fist. County services have a 6-month waiting list. I know, so what am I supposed to do? I wish I could help more. The payment is due at 9 a.m. I'm sorry. The line went dead. Jack sat in the darkness of the parking lot. The phone still pressed to his ear, listening to the dial tone like it might suddenly offer solutions. Through the booth window, he could see the exit barrier where it had all happened, the flashing lights, the angry horns, George Miller's embarrassed face. A car pulled up to pay. Jack processed it mechanically, his mind elsewhere. Derek's voice crackled over the radio. Hey Thompson, bet that old man's sleeping sound in his mansion tonight, while you're counting pennies. Still feel good about being a hero. Jack didn't respond. He turned the volume down and returned to his thoughts. Meanwhile, George's journey 20 miles across town. George Miller's hands still trembled on the steering wheel as he pulled into his estate. The automatic gates opened smoothly, no barrier requiring payment, no angry horns, no public humiliation. He'd driven straight through without stopping, his mind replaying the scene at the exit barrier over and over. The mechanical voice demanding payment, the cascade of honking horns, Derek's cruel assumptions, and then Jack, That young man with kind eyes and empty pockets, stepping forward without hesitation. George had seen Jack's wallet when he pulled out that $5 bill, had seen how thin it was, how the young man's hands shook slightly as he fed the money into the machine, and he'd seen the business card George had pressed into his palm, seen Jack tuck it away like it meant something, even though they both knew George could have written any name on it. Except George Miller wasn't any name. He pulled into the 8-car garage, between the Rolls-Royce and Margaret's Range Rover, and sat there in the darkness, engine off, still gripping the wheel. The barrier alarm still echoed in his ears. Payment required. Payment required. How many times had he heard similar demands in his life? Different words, same meaning. Pay up or face consequences. He thought about his father, dying in a hospital while mechanical voices and stern billing agents demanded payments George couldn't make. Payment required. The words were different, but the helplessness was the same. Except tonight, he hadn't been helpless. Tonight, someone had helped him. Someone who couldn't afford to. Someone who'd been mocked for it by his own co-worker. Someone who'd done it anyway. George finally released the steering wheel and walked into his mansion. The kitchen lights activated automatically. Top-of-the-line appliances gleamed. The wine fridge hummed softly. He poured bourbon, the 30-year-old stuff, and headed to his study. The portrait hung behind his desk. George Miller, CEO, founder of a supermarket empire that had started as one struggling corner store. But he looked at Annie's photograph instead. His first wife. The one who'd stood beside him when they had nothing. "Annie," he whispered, "I met someone today who reminded me of us. When we had nothing but still tried to help others." He pulled out his phone. Even at 11:30 p.m., he knew Robert Channing would answer. "Robert, it's George. I need you to do something first thing tomorrow morning. There's a young man, Jack Thompson, works security at our Westfield location. I want him brought in for an interview for the corporate security position. Sir, that position requires. I know what it requires. I also know character when I see it. This young man gave me his last $5 at the exit barrier tonight when the payment system wouldn't let me leave without my wallet. His coworker mocked him for it. He did it anyway. The exit barrier incident." Robert sounded confused. "Sir, I don't understand." "You don't need to. Just get him here tomorrow afternoon. Make the offer competitive, very competitive. Of course, anything else?" "Yes, call Harrison at legal. There's a woman at Memorial Hospital, Eleanor Thompson, who needs her medical bills paid. All of them. The full amount, whatever it takes. Tonight, Robert. It needs to happen tonight." "Yes, sir. And should I look into the other security guard from that incident?" George's jaw tightened, remembering Derek's cruel mockery as Jack tried to help. "Derek Morrison. Yes. I want his file on my desk first thing tomorrow." After hanging up, George opened his old journal and wrote, "Tonight I stood at an exit barrier, trapped by my own forgetfulness. Payment required. The machine demanded. Cars honked. People shouted. I was exposed, embarrassed, helpless. A young man named Jack Thompson, who had every reason to let me suffer, who needed that money more than I needed dignity, gave me his last $5 without hesitation. His coworker mocked him for it. Called him a fool. Said he'd been scammed. But Jack did it anyway. That's not foolishness. That's grace. Tomorrow I repay that grace 1,000-fold. Not because he expects it, but because Annie would have wanted me to. Because Dad would have wanted me to. Because that's what you do when you have the power to change someone's life. You use it." George closed the journal and stared at Annie's photograph. "He didn't help me because he knew who I was, Annie. He helped me because I needed help. That's the kind of person worth investing in." He thought about the barrier alarm, the demanding mechanical voice, the public humiliation that Jack had ended with a simple act of kindness. Payment required. Tomorrow George would make sure that payment, the karmic debt he owed to kindness, was paid in full. Jack's alarm went off at 7 a.m., but he'd been awake for hours. His small studio apartment was silent except for the drip of the kitchen faucet, something he kept meaning to fix but couldn't afford the washer for. He sat on the edge of his bed, phone in hand, staring at the hospital's number on his screen. In 2 hours they'd discharge his mother. In 2 hours he'd have to tell her he'd failed. The phone rang before he could make the call. Unknown number. "Hello? Is this Jack Thompson?" A professional woman's voice, crisp and businesslike. Yeah, that's me. This is Robert Channing, Human Resources Director for Miller's Market Corporate Headquarters. Do you have a moment? Jack's heart sank. Great. Derek probably complained about him. Just what he needed. Yes. What's this about? We'd like you to come in for an interview this afternoon. For a position in our corporate security division. The role comes with a substantial salary increase, full benefits including premium health insurance, and I'm sorry. What? Jack sat up straighter. Is this some kind of prank? I assure you, Mr. Thompson, this is quite serious. Would 2 p.m. work for you? I don't understand. I'm a parking lot attendant. How do you even know who I am? Your work ethic and character have been noted. Can you make 2 p.m.? Jack's mind raced. I have to be somewhere at 9 this morning. It's important, of course. What about 3 p.m.? Yes, I can do that, but can you tell me? Excellent. The address is 1500 Commerce Plaza, 14th floor. Dress professionally. See you then, Mr. Thompson. The line went dead before Jack could ask any of the 1,000 questions flooding his mind. He stared at his phone wondering if he'd imagined the entire conversation. Then it rang again. Memorial Hospital. His stomach dropped. Hello? Mr. Thompson, this is Patricia from billing. I wanted to call you personally. She sounded different. Excited. There's been an unexpected development with your mother's account. Please don't tell me it's gone up. No, Mr. Thompson. It's been paid. In full. Jack stopped breathing. What? The entire balance. $2,847 plus all projected physical therapy costs for the next 3 months. It was paid at 6:47 this morning, by an anonymous charitable foundation. I wanted to call you right away because I know how worried you were last night. That's not possible. There must be a mistake. No mistake. The payment cleared. Your mother's care will continue uninterrupted. She's actually awake now if you'd like to speak with her. Jack couldn't speak, couldn't move, couldn't process what he was hearing. Mr. Thompson, are you still there? Yes. Yes. Can I come see her? Of course. Visiting hours start at 8. Jack ended the call and sat there, phone clutched in his trembling hand. Anonymous foundation. Mysterious job offer. None of it made sense. Then a memory flickered. An old man in a flannel shirt, embarrassed about his forgotten wallet. Derek's cruel mockery. The Mercedes. The grateful handshake. No? Jack whispered. It couldn't be, but even as he said it, puzzle pieces began clicking into place. Meanwhile, George Miller had been in his office since 5 a.m., which wasn't unusual. What was unusual was the intensity with which he was reviewing Derek Morrison's employee file. 3 formal complaints in 18 months. Rudeness to customers. Inappropriate comments. Each one carefully worded to avoid serious consequences, but painting a clear picture of someone who shouldn't be in a customer-facing role. Robert Channing knocked and entered at 6:30 a.m. The payment went through. George asked without preamble. Yes, sir. Memorial Hospital confirmed receipt. The patient's account is clear, with a 3-month prepayment for physical therapy. Good. And you made sure it was anonymous. Completely untraceable to you or the company directly. It went through the Foundation's charitable care program, marked only as anonymous donor. George nodded, satisfied. And the Thompson boys interview. Robert has him scheduled for 3 p.m. The position profile you requested has been prepared. Harrison slid a folder across the desk. Sir, if I may ask, this is highly unusual. The salary you've authorized is 250% above our standard range for that position level. He'll earn every penny of it. But you haven't even interviewed him properly. George looked up sharply. I interviewed him last night in a parking lot. He gave me his last $20 when he probably needed it to eat. He stood up to workplace bullying to defend me, a complete stranger. That tells me everything I need to know about his character. Character is what I'm hiring. What about Derek Morrison, sir? You asked about him specifically. George's jaw tightened. What's the situation there? 3 complaints as you saw. Nothing that warranted termination under company policy but a clear pattern of behavior. He's been with us for 7 years, mostly unremarkable performance reviews, except for notes about attitude issues. Fire him. Robert blinked. Sir. Today. Effective immediately. Give him 2 weeks severance, we'll be fair about it, but I don't want him representing this company anymore. The way he treated me last night, and more importantly, the way he tried to humiliate Jack Thompson for doing the right thing, that's not who we are. I'll handle it personally. And Robert, when you let him go, make it clear this is about his pattern of behavior toward customers and colleagues. I want it documented properly. After Robert left, George returned to the journal entry he'd been reading. Not from 40 years ago this time, but one he'd written just an hour earlier. I met a young man last night who reminded me of who I used to be, who I should have stayed. In a parking lot, while his cruel co-worker mocked us both, Jack Thompson gave everything he had to help a stranger. No hesitation, no expectation of reward. Just pure human kindness in the face of contempt. I've spent 40 years building an empire, telling myself it was to honor Annie and Dad, to make sure I'd never be helpless again. But somewhere along the way I forgot the lesson. Money isn't the answer to helplessness. Kindness is. Today I'll change Jack's life the way a stranger once changed mine. But more than that, I'll remove Derek Morrison from a position where he can poison that kindness. Some people carry darkness with them. They don't deserve platforms to spread it. George's intercom buzzed, his executive assistant's voice. Sir. Derek Morrison is online too. He's quite agitated, asking to speak with you directly about a situation last night. George smiled grimly. So Derek had figured out who he'd insulted. Too little, too late. Tell him to speak with HR. Robert Channing will be handling his employment matters going forward. Yes, sir. George stood and walked to his office window, watching the sun rise over the city he'd helped build. Somewhere out there, Jack was probably getting ready to visit his mother, relief flooding through him for the first time in weeks. And somewhere else, Derek was about to learn that cruelty had consequences. George thought about Annie, about what she would have said. She'd always believed in second chances, in the good in people. But she'd also had no patience for bullies. Some people choose kindness, he said to her memory. And some people choose cruelty. I know which ones deserve to thrive. He picked up his phone and called Robert back. Add something to Derek Morrison's severance package. 6 months of outplacement services. Resume help, interview coaching, the works. Sir, after what he did. We're not cruel, Robert. We're just making room for better people. Help him find a new path. Just not in my company. Understood, sir. George hung up and checked his watch. In a few hours Jack Thompson would walk through these doors. In a few hours, a life would transform. But first there was one more call to make. He dialed a number he hadn't used in years. A reporter he'd helped get started decades ago. Someone who owed him a favor. Linda, it's George Miller. I have a story for you. About kindness in unexpected places. About a young man who chose to help when it cost him everything. Are you interested? Jack stood in the lobby of Commerce Plaza at 2:45 p.m. Wearing his only suit, the one he'd bought for his mother's retirement party 3 years ago, slightly tight now across the shoulders. His hands were sweating. The morning at the hospital had been surreal. His mother, radiant with relief, had cried when he told her about the anonymous payment. The physical therapist had been thrilled to continue treatment. For the first time in weeks, hope felt like more than a cruel joke. But this, standing in a gleaming skyscraper lobby, surrounded by people in designer suits, this felt like he'd stepped into someone else's life. The elevator opened on the 14th floor, to reveal a reception area that probably cost more than Jack's entire apartment building. A professional woman in a crisp blazer greeted him. Mr. Thompson, right this way. She led him through glass doors into an office that overlooked the city. Behind a massive desk, sat a man in his 50s, sharp suit, sharper eyes. Jack Thompson, Robert Channing, HR Director. Please, sit. Jack sat, trying not to fidget. I'll get straight to the point, Robert said. We're offering you the position of Corporate Security Coordinator. Starting salary of $65,000 per year, full health benefits including dental and vision, 401k matching, 3 weeks paid vacation. You'd start Monday. Jack's brain short-circuited. I what? But you haven't even asked me anything. You don't know if I'm qualified. Robert smiled slightly. Let me ask you something. Last night, in the parking lot, an elderly man needed help. What did you do? Jack's blood went cold. How do you wait? That was, answer the question please. I helped him. Paid for his groceries when he forgot his wallet. Why? Because he needed help, and because someone was treating him terribly for no reason. You gave him money you desperately needed yourself. You stood up to a coworker who was being cruel. It wasn't a question. Jack swallowed hard. How do you know all that? Robert leaned forward. That elderly man you helped. He's George Miller, founder and CEO of this company. Your actions last night demonstrated exactly the kind of character we need in our organization. The kind of integrity that can't be taught. Jack felt dizzy, the pieces finally clicking into place. The hospital payment. I can neither confirm nor deny involvement in your personal matters, Robert said carefully. But I can tell you that this job offer is very real. Do you accept? Jack thought about his mother, fighting through physical therapy. About his empty wallet and emptier refrigerator. About standing in that parking booth for 12 hours, watching the world go by while Derek made every shift miserable. Yes, he whispered. Then stronger, yes I accept. Robert smiled genuinely for the first time. Excellent. Before we proceed with paperwork, there's something you should know. Derek Morrison's employment was terminated this morning. Jack's eyes widened. What? Because of last night? Because of a pattern of behavior that violated our company values. Last night was simply the final confirmation of what our records already showed. You're not responsible for his termination, Jack. He is. Before Jack could process this, Robert pressed a button on his phone. He's ready. A door Jack hadn't noticed opened, and George Miller walked in still in that same flannel shirt, looking somehow smaller and larger than he had in the parking lot. Hello again, Jack. Jack stood so fast his chair rolled backward. Mr. Miller, I thank you. I don't even know what to say. Sit please. George took the chair next to Jack, not behind the desk. Equal footing. I wanted to explain myself. You already paid me back for last night 1,000 times over. You didn't have to. Let me tell you a story. George's voice was soft but firm. 41 years ago, I stood where you stood. My father was dying in a hospital, and I couldn't afford his care. I spent his last days arguing with billing departments instead of holding his hand. He died alone because I was on the phone trying to negotiate payments I couldn't make. Jack saw the pain flicker across the old man's face. A stranger helped me then, left money in an envelope at my struggling store. Anonymous, it kept my doors open one more month. That month changed everything. I'm so sorry about your father, Jack said quietly. I built all this. George gestured at the office, the city beyond, partly to make sure I'd never feel that helpless again. But somewhere along the way, I forgot what it felt like. Until last night, when I saw you count out your last dollars without hesitation, when I saw you defend me against cruelty, I remembered what true character looks like. George pulled out a small card, handing it to Jack. This is my private number. You call me if you ever need anything. And I mean anything. Jack stared at the card, overwhelmed. But more importantly, George continued, I want you to promise me something. When you're in a position to help someone. And you will be, you do it. You pay it forward. That's how we change the world, Jack. One act of kindness at a time. I promise, Jack managed. Good. George stood extending his hand. Welcome to the team, son. Your mother must be very proud. They shook hands, and Jack felt the weight of possibility settle on his shoulders. Not burden. Possibility. 3 months later, Jack stood outside his new apartment. A real one-bedroom in a safe neighborhood, watching movers carry in the last of his mother's furniture. Eleanor would have her own room, a real bed, a window with an actual view. His phone rang. George Miller. Jack, how's the move going? Almost done, sir. Mom's thrilled about the garden. Good, good. Listen, I wanted to give you a heads up. There's a story running tomorrow in the business section. About that night in the parking lot. Jack's stomach tightened. A story, don't worry, tastefully done. About kindness in unexpected places. The reporter's an old friend. She wanted to highlight what real character looks like in today's world. George paused. Also there's something else. We've received over 100 applications for our new Pay It Forward program. The what? That employee assistance fund we discussed. Remember, you suggested we create a program where employees could help each other in times of crisis. The board approved it last week. They're calling it the Thompson Initiative. Sir, I don't. You inspired it, Jack. Your willingness to help when it cost you everything. We've already helped 5 families facing medical emergencies, all because you showed us what our values should look like in action. After the call, Jack helped his mother settle into her new room. She sat on the bed, testing the mattress, then looked up at him with tears in her eyes. My boy, my brave kind boy. Mom, no, let me say this, you could have kept that money, could have ignored that old man, could have let Derek's cruelty go unchallenged. But you didn't, and look what happened. I just did what you taught me. Exactly. She stood, hugging him tight. I taught you kindness, and kindness changed our lives. Later Jack drove to the Westfield Millers Market, his old workplace. The new security guard, a young woman named Maria, waved as he approached the booth. Mr. Thompson, what brings you here? Just wanted to check something. He walked into the store, past the aisles he'd watched through that booth window for so long. In the employee break room, someone had posted a new sign. Pay It Forward, the Thompson Way. Underneath a collection of stories, employees helping each other, random acts of kindness, a culture shifting, one good deed at a time. Jack's phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. Mr. Thompson, my name is Sarah Chen. Maria gave me your number. My daughter needs surgery, and I don't know where to turn. She said you might understand. Jack smiled, the cycle continuing. Meet me at the coffee shop across the street in 20 minutes, he texted back. We'll figure this out together. As he walked out, he noticed something on the community board. A photo from the security camera that night, 3 months ago. Grainy black and white, but clear enough. Jack handing money to George Miller while Derek stood to the side, arms crossed. Someone had captioned it. This is who we are. Jack drove to the coffee shop, thinking about ripples in a pond, about how one moment of kindness could spread outward, touching lives he'd never know, changing futures he'd never see. His phone rang again. George Miller, 3rd time today. Sir, Jack, one more thing. Derek Morrison. Jack tensed. He hadn't thought about his former coworker in weeks. What about him? He sent me a letter, apologizing. Said losing his job was the wake-up call he needed. He's in therapy now, working on his anger issues. Asked if he could volunteer with the Pay It Forward program. Said he wants to learn to be more like you. Jack didn't know what to say. I told him maybe, in a year or 2, if he does the work. George paused. Even people who choose cruelty can learn to choose kindness, Jack. Your example is teaching them how. After hanging up, Jack sat in his car, watching Sarah Chen pull into the parking lot. Young mother, worry etched on her face, searching for hope in a stranger's kindness. He'd been there. He knew that desperation. But he also knew something else now. Kindness multiplied when you gave it away. It didn't diminish you, it expanded you. Jack got out of the car, walking towards Sarah with his hand extended and his heart open. Hi, I'm Jack. Let's talk about how we can help your daughter. In his pocket, George Miller's card. In his wallet, enough money to help. In his heart, the certainty that this was what life was meant to be. Not accumulating wealth, not building walls, but building bridges, one person at a time, one moment of grace at a time. The story had started with a forgotten wallet, but it had become something bigger. A movement, a culture shift, a reminder that in a world that often felt cruel and cold, kindness was still the most powerful force of all. Jack helped Sarah Chen that day, paid her daughter's surgery deposit, connected her with the Thompson Initiative, and Sarah in turn helped someone else. And they helped another, and the ripples spread outward, infinite and unstoppable. 6 months after that night in the parking lot, George Miller stood at a podium, announcing a city-wide kindness initiative. Jack Thompson beside him, no longer a parking attendant, but a symbol of what one person's choice could create.
Join us to share meaningful stories by hitting the like and subscribe buttons.
Don't forget to turn on the notification bell to start your day with profound lessons and heartfelt empathy.